Woke up possessed again. Brother found me just laying on the bed breathing heavily and crying. He woke the guy to try to help me to wake up. He starts praying again and calls my name. I suddenly stop crying and he starts talking to the spirit controlling me. A few minutes of talking and shouting at the spirit. It turns out the spirit is protecting me. It brought my soul back into my body and was fighting off other negative spirits. One by one, the guy found out that I had inherited my ancestors' protectors. My paternal side of the family has a long line of headhunters and priestess, and thus they have acquired a lot spiritual protectors, mostly in animal shape. My grandmother used to be a local priestess and it seems these things were passed down to me. Found out I have 7 guardians in me and they were not able to manifest themselves, because the spiritual door inside me was closed. The guys then cleansed me and told me that with the guardians now free, I will be able to see, hear and smell spirits, ghosts etc. But I wouldn't fear them. What the guy said was true. Within a week, I saw many fucking spirits circling around my home area. One particular one was a gigantic thing with furs covering its body. Shit was weird, but somehow it wasn't that scary but more odd to me.
Dude, this is a crazy story. Where are you from?
I'm a little paranoid of telling my location, but yeah, Malaysia. Pretty sure spirits and ghosts are more aggressive in Southeast Asian countries.
There is so much I want to ask. I guess for starters, did your dad win the legal proceedings to get the land back? Was that the last you heard of the 2 men who killed your aunt? I'm also interested in your father's side, and what sorts of practices and beliefs headhunters and priestesses have. Were you exposed to those beliefs as a child? Were you ignorant of them? And I'd love to hear of any specific sightings you had. You mentioned a giant, fur-covered creature. Can you go into greater detail about any of these?
The court case is still ongoing. Both idiots kept on reappealing the case even though they kept losing. This is like the 5th time they reappealed. They wouldn't win though, unless they bribe the judge, since they don't have any strong evidence on the claim. This case has been going on for about 4 years now and Desu I'm getting tired of it. As of those 2 idiots, I last saw the guy who sold the land during a wedding of a relative of mine, like 2 weeks ago. The guy is actually an uncle of mine, 3rd cousin if I am not mistaken. Since I am more sensitive to, let's say, the supernatural now, the guy smells really bad, and I mean like some rotten meat or trash smell. I sometimes saw some kind of shadow following him. Maybe his guardian or something, but the thing has some bad vibes around it. Never heard anything from the other guy who bought the land though. The only time I saw him is during the court case hearing. Both idiots are still actively sending weird mumbo-jumbo shit towards my family, so I guess they're still seething about the land claim. The headhunting and priestesses thing are mostly my people's culture. Olden days, the tribes believed that the more heads you posses, the more powerful you are spiritually. The heads can be used for protecting your property, wealth etc., since it is believed that the head contains the spirit of the dead. Of course, no one practices headhunting nowadays. The priestesses thing is more like the local shaman or witch doctor, curing sickness, contacting the dead, getting rid of evil spirits. My paternal grandmother loves to tell stuff about the spirit world. I mean shit, my family used to own 3 skeletal heads and 2 large urns that housed something. Every single morning, I would see grandma talking to these things and offering some food and drinks. Told me it was our family's guardian or something. She used to be a priestess though, so I guess it's expected that she has these things. I remember vividly that if I had a stomachache, she would chant something, put her palm on my stomach, and suddenly, my stomach didn't hurt anymore. Funny though, the spirits never bothered the family even after grandma passed away. As for spirit or ghost sighting, I have too many experiences to tell. Ever since my guardian spirits were let loose, I can see and sense spirits. I could see spirits, ghosts, jinns or whatever. The giant, fur-covered thing is just another example of a spirit, I think, living near a large and old tree near my house area. It doesn't notice me. Probably thought I can't see it, but it's there, minding its business. Shit, even in my workplace, there are some spirits or ghosts living there. They are just minding their own business, and the guardians inside me told me the spirits wouldn't bother me, so I just do my shit normally without thinking much of it. A workmate of mine, someone who could also see these things, would smile subtly at me when there's something behind or near other colleague. We find it pretty funny that no one else would notice these things but us. If I could, I would tell all of my experiences or knowledges I learned from the guy who frequently helped me with the supernaturals, but it will be too much to write. Here's a quick sketch of the fur-covered creature in on. It more or less looked like this. Alright/X/ I have a story for you, so sit a while and listen. This takes place 3 summers ago during a boar hunting trip, down in a very rural area of the Ozark South. My main reasoning for sharing this here is that, ultimately, I don't believe in the paranormal. However, I believe I may have run across something that I couldn't explain and I want some input. Fair warning, I'm no good at green text. However, I'm not going to assault you with a wall of text. In any case, enough pretense aside. Be back from college and wanting to get out into the woods. Be bored as fuck on a Friday night, end of mine, JD. JD is an Eagle Scout, not prone to being spooked very easily, and I have been hunting in places ranging from deep south swamps to Alaska. We pack our shit up, and leave his place around 12:30 a.m. After stopping for energy drinks and beef jerky, every hunter's best friends, we end up getting out there at around 2:15 a.m. We'd hunted this area for boar many times in the daylight, seen tons of deer, squirrels and even a baby fawn that fell asleep by the warmth of our car engine once. Basically, a nice place. We pull it off the gravel tract, 40 miles from town and 3 miles from a potent gas station/deer check station. Decide not to fuck about in the woods at night. We'd had a mountain lion walk in our tracks on a previous hunting trip. Roll down windows and try to take a short nap. Instantly we're hit with this nasty, cloying, sickly sweet odor. I just brush it off going just some wet deer, haha, should mean our scent won't travel far in heavy damp air. JD just looks at me and says that smells like death, bro, like a cow that's been out in the sun too long. I launch into a diatribe about him being a gigantic pussy and how he should deal with it. In any case, since we don't want either to be mucking about in woods home to mountain lions in the dead of night, or be accused of night hunting by some faggot ranger, we decide to go check and see if the potent gas station is open. Surprise! JD's shitty old 4-banger won't start. Fine, looks like it's a nap followed by hunting while we wait for some toothless mechanic to come jumpstart his car. All the while, this smell just seems to be seeping in through the vents, and the cracks in the windows. It gets to the point where I'm actively retching in the car. Enough's enough, and we decide that if something had gone and died we'd prefer not to be stuck in a gigantic tin can right beside the corpse. We get out of the car, parked in the middle of this gravel parking area surrounded by tall grass on the north side, and woods on all the others. A swamp was to our direct west, full of boar, deer, and critters. As I'm sitting there loading up the magazine to my rifle, JD just keeps scanning the tree line with his eyes. To the Europoers and Northerners, hunting in swamps is close quarters. We hunt boar with semi-automatic rifles in the south. You want a quick follow-up shot in case the 400-pound ball of muscle with 8-inch tusks decides to charge you from 25 to 30 yards out. Something's got his hackles all up, but I'm feeling fine so I just dismiss it as faggotry. Anyway, suited up, we make our way down to the small footpath, 1 to 2 feet wide, that winds its way down into the swamp. However, reaching the tree line, we just both stopped, staring into the woods for a few minutes before either of us spoke. It was almost like shining a flashlight down a mineshaft, where the darkness sort of dissipated the light. I could feel my skin crawl, and something deep in the hindmost parts of my mind told me just to walk right back to the center of the clearing and wait for light. Nope. So, we do what any caveman would have done in that situation. We grunted out a few excuses to preserve our manhood, and went and sat the fuck down by his car. Like fuck I'm going to bumble through woods with mountain lion, weed growers, and God knows what else at 3:15, by that point, in the goddamn morning. The mood lightened, and the smell had seemed to recede a bit, so we just busied ourselves checking our rifles and talking about girls, politics, and history. We're a weird bunch. After a while the smell started coming back, and we began to voice our concern that something that smelled fucking dead was moving around. As the smell starts growing more and more oppressive I start hearing branches and twigs break in the undergrowth. Whatever it is, it's moving. I don't like that one bit. At this point, I'm thinking it's a mountain lion that's all covered in gore from a recent kill that's about to go full territorial mode. That wouldn't have been out of the question. But it wasn't. As I strained to hear where it was, I noticed that the snapping didn't come from the pat-pat-pat-pat of a four-legged animal. It resembled the crunch, crunch, crunch crunch of a novice hunter picking his way through the undergrowth. My first thought was we either had a ranger with a sick sense of humor, a drug grower with a great sense of humor, or worse, a motherfucking serial killer. Either way, weapons were shouldered, bolts closed on loaded chambers, and lights pointed towards where the sound was. Nothing. It's fucking nothing. Just the smell. And slower now, crunch crunch. And it stops. The smell is everywhere now, and whoever it is sitting far enough back in the tree line not to be silhouetted by our lights. Smart asshole. No eye shine either, which ruled out just about any animal other than boar, which make enough noise to be easily noticeable. One again. The caveman brain rears up deep within my psyche and tells me, fire. A fire, you idiot, build a fire. So, what do? JD and I build a fucking fire. Throughout this whole affair, other than a few moments, we've been mostly quiet. However, the fire gives us comfort. And whatever it is seems to back off into the forest, if only for a while. As the fire burns hot, we start joking again, having a decent time, convincing ourselves it was only a cougar. However, there's only so much timber in a gravel clearing, and after a while we'd have to venture out of the firelight to keep the fire going. That time came, and as the fire burned down to embers, the smell came back more oppressive than before. And with that smell, come an almost oppressive feeling of fear. Not regular fear, but an intense guttural fear that made your muscles tense, your stomach turn, and your eyes go wide. Every fiber of our being told us to get more wood, to keep the fire high. Only with fire would we survive the night. So we cautiously walked to the closest tree line, barely able to see from the dying light of the fire. We'd been trying to save our flashlights. I was on guard duty, as we figured that my SETME .308 semi-automatic would be a better standoff weapon than JD's small carbine. I'm tacticaling the fuck out at this point, adrenaline flowing from a profound feeling that something just isn't right. JD leans down into the undergrowth to pick up a stick, reaching into the tree line. He screams and falls backwards, while branches break right in front of him. He gets up, freaking out, dusting himself off, saying he saw something staring at him first. Sunken eyes, a thick brow ridge, ashy gray skin. Then, it smiled at him. Not so much as smiled, but curled back its lips in a Cheshire grin. We are at NopeCon 1, gentlemen. I'm going to ignore the next hour of this hopscotch game of the fire dying, the smell growing more intense, him, as we call it now, drawing nearer, building the fire back up, and him retreating back to stay away from the firelight. However, it should be noted that this entire defenses, seeing if it could find a way to get up close without being seen. By the time 5 a.m. rolled around, we'd exhausted almost all of the dry firewood that wasn't within the tree line, except for the tall grass on the northeast side of the road. We of course, do what we have to do, and slowly pick our way over to the tall grass. By this point I have taped a flashlight to my rifle, and switch it on as we leave the fire to get some dry grass. As JD is filling his hands with tinder, I check my right hand side, and look down the road. I wish I hadn't. Just as I swing my flashlight over the road, I see him for the first time. It's grayish black, with either sloughing skin or matted gray fur, I honestly couldn't tell. It crossed the 10-yard wide track what seemed like instantly. Hunched over, maybe 5.5 to 6 feet tall, moving